He left me for my sister and thought I'd stay broken. My father watched it happen and stayed silent. But I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I rebuilt, quietly, fiercely, until the day I said, I do, and none of them were invited. I came home from the charity gala a little after midnight, my heels clicking against the black and white marble floor of the Brooks estate. The lights in the front sitting room were still on, which was unusual. My father normally insisted on switching them off before 10. I didn't think much of it, until I stepped inside. Cassidy was seated on the edge of the velvet chaise lounge in her favorite silk robe, the blush pink one with lace cuffs she always wore when she wanted to look innocent but alluring. And she wasn't alone. Nathan Hale, my fiancé of 4 years, was standing beside her, holding a flute of champagne. But it wasn't the drink in his hand that made my stomach twist. It was the engagement ring on hers. My ring. The vintage rose gold band with an oval-cut diamond and 2 side sapphires that he and I picked out together in a tiny Parisian boutique 2 summers ago. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. Or sleepwalking. I stood frozen at the door, still in my floor-length black gown, the one with the high collar and open back. The one Nathan used to say made me look like a storm he couldn't stop chasing. He looked at me now like I was a stranger. Elena, Cassidy breathed. Her voice was syrupy and sweet. You're back. I was just, trying it on. Just for fun. She held up her hand, showing off the diamond as it sparkled under the chandelier. I didn't answer. Not at first. I just blinked at her. Then at him. Nathan didn't smile. Didn't speak. His jaw was tense, the way it always got when he was about to do something cowardly. Tell me it's a joke, I finally said. My voice was quiet. Even cold. Nathan exhaled slowly. Elena, I wanted to talk to you about this tomorrow. After the gala. So it's real. He didn't deny it. Cassidy bit her lip and looked down, but I caught the glint of victory in her eyes before she could mask it. I thought we were done with the lying, I added, stepping forward. You said we were solid, Nathan. You said. I know what I said, he cut in. But things changed. You've been distant for months. I let out a soft laugh, brittle as glass. I've been working. On your campaign. On our future. It never felt like ours. Not really, he said, as if those words wouldn't split me in half. And Cassidy, she's been there in a way you haven't. Cassidy flinched. Nathan, don't say it like that. No, I said, raising a hand. Let him speak. Let him finish gutting me. Nathan's mouth opened, but he didn't speak. Not another word. He just looked away as if that would make me disappear. I turned to Cassidy. You know that ring was mine. I know, she whispered. But it fits me too. I stared at her long enough for the silence to settle like frost between us. And then I turned without another word and walked upstairs. My room hadn't changed. The heavy drapes were drawn. My mother's jewelry box sat on the vanity. The silk robe I wore in winter was still folded on the chair. It was still mine. For now. I unzipped my dress and let it pool to the floor, then sat on the edge of the bed without bothering to change. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Dad. Come to the morning meeting. It's important. Family matters. Don't overreact. I didn't reply. Instead, I stood cross to the walk-in closet and pulled down my carry-on. I started packing. Fully. Deliberately. I didn't cry. Not when I folded the gray sweater Nathan used to steal from my closet. Not when I picked up the perfume bottle he once said smelled like home. Not even when I closed the suitcase. But when I reached into the drawer and found the white velvet box that once held my ring. Now empty, I stood there for a long time, my hands trembling. By morning the whole household knew. The staff wouldn't look me in the eye. Dad was already seated at the head of the breakfast table, his coffee untouched. Across from him, Cassidy sat demurely in a powder blue dress, her hair curled, her lips the same soft pink as the roses in her lap. Nathan stood at the window, his hands in his pockets. Elena, Dad said when I entered. Sit. I didn't. I remained standing. You're making this harder than it has to be, he said, setting down his mug. Am I? I said evenly. Cassidy looked up. I never meant to. Save it, I snapped. Then steadied my voice. Go ahead, Dad. Say what you brought me here to hear. He sighed. Nathan proposed to Cassidy last night. As I can see. And I've given them my blessing. My eyes flicked to him. That was fast. Elena, you've been disengaged in this relationship for months. Everyone could see it. Nathan told me. Oh, I'm sure Nathan told you many things. Elena, Cassidy whispered. I didn't steal him. We just connected. Like magnets, I muttered. Elena, Dad snapped. That's enough. I folded my arms. You want me to what? Smile and hand over my wedding plans. No, he said, leaning forward. I want you to be gracious. You're a Brooks. You rise above things. You don't make a scene. You're asking me to pretend this didn't happen, I said, voice flat. I'm asking you to step aside with dignity, he corrected. For a moment no one said anything. Then I exhaled through my nose and looked straight at Cassidy. Did you sleep with him while we were still together? Her eyes widened. Elena, Nathan began. Answer me. Cassidy hesitated. It only happened once. We didn't plan it. I nodded. Nathan looked panicked now. Elena, we didn't mean for it to. It's fine, I said quietly. You can keep the ring. And the blessing. And whatever else you took. I turned on my heel and walked out. Upstairs I finished packing the rest of my things. My room, mine for 23 years, felt foreign now. As if the moment Cassidy touched the doorknob the walls had forgotten me. I carried the suitcase down the stairs myself. No one stopped me. Cassidy called out behind me, Elena, please don't hate me. I didn't turn around. You don't have to worry about what I feel, Cassidy. That's never been your burden. As I reached the foyer I heard my father call after me. Elena. You'll regret walking out like this. Family comes first. I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. No, I said over my shoulder. Convenience comes first. I was just never convenient enough. And I left. Outside the air was cool and sharp. A cab waited at the end of the driveway. As I got in I pulled out my phone. There was one number I hadn't called in a long time. Jude Ellis. I typed 3 words and hit send. Are you free? I didn't go far. Not yet. The cab dropped me off at my mother's old apartment building on Maple and 6th. Quiet, tucked away and mostly forgotten. The landlord, a kind older woman named Mrs. Levinson, hadn't changed the locks since Mom passed. You're back, she said, blinking at me in surprise when I stepped into the lobby, suitcase in hand. Just for a few nights if that's all right, I said. She gave me a long look, then simply said, your mother always said you'd come here when you needed to remember who you were. I smiled faintly. I didn't feel like myself yet, but I wanted to remember her. By noon I'd showered, unpacked the essentials and silenced every group chat that still included Cassidy's name. I was curled on the window bench, half distracted by a documentary when my phone rang. I stared at the screen. I let it ring once. Twice. And then I answered. Elena. His voice was clipped, like always when he thought he had the moral high ground. We need to talk. I thought we already did, I said calmly. I'm not going to let you sulk away like some child throwing a tantrum. Oh. I leaned back. Did Cassidy tell you I moved into Mom's old place? Or did Nathan? Cassidy said you left without telling anyone where you were going. She's worried. She's worried. I repeated, voice brittle. She's wearing my ring. There was a beat of silence on his end. Then, we all need to move forward from this. What happened wasn't ideal. But it doesn't justify burning the whole family down. I didn't burn anything, Dad. I just walked away before I did. He ignored that. Cassidy's trying to make things right. She tried it on for fun, I said coldly, and kept it on for love. Elena, he snapped, then paused, composing himself. Look, they'll be announcing the engagement officially at the charity board's fall gala next week. I need you to attend. I laughed, and this time it was genuine. You want me to clap while Cassidy announces her engagement to my ex-fiancé? It's not about that. It's about perception. The family. The foundation. It'll look terrible if you boycott. So you're asking me to pretend. I'm asking you to be gracious. Be the bigger person. The words hit harder than I expected. He said it so easily. As if being the bigger person was my job. My duty. My punishment. I took a breath. What if I don't want to be bigger? What if I just want to be allowed to be angry or sad or human? There was a long silence. Then he said, I thought I raised you to be stronger than this. That was when I hung up. 2 hours later, Cassidy showed up at the apartment. I hadn't told her where I was staying. Of course I hadn't. But somehow she always managed to find out. I opened the door a crack, expecting a delivery. Instead, there she was, dressed in a soft yellow sweater, hair in a braid over her shoulder like she used to wear it in high school when she was still pretending to be harmless. "Elena," she said, breathless. "Can I come in?" I stared at her. "How did you find me?" She held up her phone sheepishly. "Dad." "Of course." I stepped aside. Not out of warmth. Just habit. Cassidy walked in slowly, gazing around the place as if it were a museum. "I haven't been here since your mom's memorial," she said, voice hushed. "It still smells like her." "Because I didn't sell it. Or gut it. Or rent it out," I replied. She nodded and sat down on the edge of the sofa. "Elena, I didn't come to fight." "Then what did you come for?" "I came to ask." She twisted her fingers together. "Can we try to make this less awful? Please? I know it looks terrible. But it wasn't like I planned any of this." "Didn't you?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because it sure felt like it." Her eyes welled with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You know that, right? I never meant for Nathan to fall for me." "But you let him." She blinked. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," I said evenly, "is that I was with him for 4 years. And somehow I wasn't enough. And instead of leaving cleanly, he slid my ring onto your finger while I was still wearing it in my heart." Cassidy covered her mouth like she might cry. "I know. I hate myself for it. But I love him, Elena. I do." I looked at her for a long moment. Then said, "You'll probably get everything you want. But don't come here asking me to help you sleep better at night." She stood slowly, wiping her cheeks. "I know you think I'm a monster. But I love you. You're my sister." I gave a soft, tired smile. "No, Cassidy. You're my father's daughter. And his perfect little project. And the only reason he's pushing this wedding through is because he finally gets to have the picture-perfect family he always wanted." She flinched. I opened the door. "You should go." Cassidy stepped forward but paused at the threshold. "Are you coming to the engagement gala next week?" I didn't answer. She looked at me for a second longer, then said, "He misses you, Nathan. He hasn't said it. But I know he does." "Then he's a fool," I replied. "Because he picked you while I was still standing in the room." After she left, I stayed frozen for a while, staring at the door as if it might open again. It didn't. Dad, my phone buzzed. A message from Jude. "I'm free. Where are you?" I stared at it for a moment. Then I wrote back. "Mom's old apartment. I could use a walk." 5 minutes later. "On my way." We met at the small park behind the old bookstore we used to study in. I saw him standing near the fountain, his hands shoved in his coat pockets, collar up against the breeze. "Hey," he said as I approached. "Hey," I replied. "Thanks for coming." "Anytime," he said simply. "You still take your coffee black with a cinnamon stick?" "You remembered that?" Jude handed me a cup. "I also remember how you used to dip the cinnamon into the foam and hum the theme song from Pride and Prejudice while reading depositions." I laughed despite myself. "God, that's embarrassing." "It was endearing," he said with a smirk. "Even when you snapped at me for highlighting the wrong clause." I sipped the coffee. It was still warm. "How are you so calm all the time?" He shrugged. "Law school knocks the fire out of most people. I just managed to hold on to mine." We walked in silence for a few steps before he asked, "Want to talk about it?" I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I whispered, "Cassidy's wearing the ring." He stopped walking. I turned to face him. "She's marrying him. My fiancé." Jude's face stayed still but his eyes darkened. "Did he cheat?" I nodded. "More than once, I think. And your dad is walking her down the aisle with a smile." He exhaled, then said, "I always wondered how you stayed in that house." "Me too," I whispered. Another pause. "Elena," he said, his voice low. "You can come to my city. I'll help you settle in. You don't owe anyone anything here anymore." I looked at him, startled. "I mean it," he added. "You deserve a life that doesn't require you to shrink to fit." For the first time in days, I felt something uncoil in my chest. Something that almost resembled hope. I whispered, "Can I think about it?" Jude smiled. "Take your time. I've waited before." The next morning, I woke up in my mother's apartment to a text from Mrs. Levinson. Check the society pages. I blinked, still half asleep, and opened my browser. There was Brooks family to celebrate surprise engagement. Cassidy Brooks and Nathan Hale confirm gala announcement. Underneath the headline, a photo. Cassidy in a long emerald green gown. Nathan beside her, his hand protectively on her back. And on her neck. I stared. The necklace. It wasn't just any necklace. It was the necklace. A vintage emerald piece from my mother's jewelry box, the one she said had belonged to her grandmother. She told me the night before her heart surgery, if you ever marry Elena, wear this. It'll remind you I'm close. Cassidy wore it now, smiling into the camera like she hadn't gutted me twice over. I didn't move. Didn't speak. For a few minutes I just sat there, letting the heat crawl up my throat and settle in my chest like molten lead. Then I called the house. Cassidy picked up on the second ring. Elena, she said sweetly. You saw the article? You're wearing her necklace. There was a pause. Oh. That. My voice sharpened. That necklace wasn't yours to touch. Dad said it was okay, she said quickly. He told Nathan it would go perfectly with my dress for the photos. You hadn't worn it in years. Because I was waiting, I said, the words ripping out of me, to wear it on my wedding day. Cassidy was silent. You went through Mom's jewelry? I asked. Without even asking? Elena, please don't be dramatic. Take it off, I said, my tone low, cold. I don't care if you have to redo the shoot. That necklace doesn't belong in your story. Elena, people have already seen the photos. I don't care. She sighed like I was being unreasonable. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wanted something of hers. You always had everything. My hands trembled against the phone. You can have Nathan. You can have Dad's favor. I'll take the whole Brooks estate while you're at it. But that necklace. I exhaled. That was never yours to wear. That night I stopped by the estate. Not to argue. Not to plead. To reclaim. The staff let me in without question. The entryway looked exactly the same. Cold floors, soft lighting, staged like a hotel lobby. My steps echoed as I climbed the stairs, turned left and went into the master dressing room. The necklace box sat open on Cassidy's vanity, the velvet cushion inside now slightly dented. I picked it up. Behind me a voice, "You're trespassing." I turned. Nathan leaned against the doorframe in a half-buttoned shirt and slacks. Funny, I said. Last I checked, my name's still on the title. His eyes narrowed. You came to steal? No. I came to reclaim. He crossed his arms. You never wanted to wear that necklace. You told me you didn't even like emeralds. I didn't like attention, I corrected. There's a difference. He stepped closer. You're acting like this is all betrayal. Like Cassidy and I planned this behind your back. You didn't have to plan it, I said flatly. You just had to let it happen. And you did. Nathan exhaled long and slow. You left Elena. You packed up and disappeared like none of this mattered. I blinked. After you gave my ring to my stepsister. Yes, Nathan, I did leave. His voice softened. You were always so composed. So untouchable. I thought you'd never care. I didn't stop caring, I whispered. I just stopped begging. There was a pause between us, long, heavy, lined with everything we hadn't said in years. Then Cassidy's voice rang out from downstairs. Nathan, are you coming to bed? I smiled, small and bitter. Your future's calling. I walked past him, necklace in hand. He didn't stop me. Back at the apartment, I sat cross-legged on the floor and laid the necklace in my lap. The emeralds shimmered faintly under the lamp. I closed the box and placed it beside my suitcase, which I hadn't fully unpacked. Then my phone lit up again. Jude, want to grab lunch tomorrow? There's this new spot near the courthouse I've been dying to try. I hesitated. Then typed. I'd love to. The next day we met at a cafe tucked between two office towers. It was modern, full of sun-drenched windows and high ceilings. Jude was already waiting at a table near the back, flipping through a case file. He stood when he saw me. Hey. You always this early? Only for court, or you. He pulled out my chair. I ordered the duck ravioli. You'll want to steal a bite. I smiled despite myself. You still remember what I like. He raised a brow. I remember more than you think. Our food arrived quickly and for a few minutes, we ate in comfortable silence. Then he said, "You okay?" "I'm not sure. Want to talk about it?" I hesitated then nodded. They used my mom's necklace. For Cassidy's engagement photos. Without asking. Jude blinked slowly. Wow. Yeah. What did you do? Took it back. Good. I looked at him. That's it? No lecture about choosing peace. Jude set down his fork. You were raised in a house where silence was called grace. Where boundaries were always one-sided. You don't owe anyone peace who took yours. Something in my chest cracked. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed to hear those exact words. I looked down at my plate, blinking quickly. Elena, he said gently. It's okay to miss what you had. Even if it was never really yours. I don't miss him, I said softly. Not really. I miss the girl who believed it was real. Jude didn't say anything. He just reached across the table and took my hand. Not tightly. Not urgently. Just solidly. As if to say I'm still here. When you're ready. By the end of the week I signed the lease. It was a small unit on the second floor of a renovated building near the university's west quad. Brick exterior, ivy climbing up one side. A bookstore on the corner and a flower shop directly below me that always smelled like eucalyptus and wet soil. It was perfect. The moment I stepped in, the silence was clean. Not hollow, not haunted. Just empty in the right way. Like something was waiting to begin. For once, I didn't feel like I was living in someone else's leftover space. No one had ever called me here. No one had left behind toothbrushes, jackets, or promises. No photos of Nathan. No scent of Cassidy's rose lotion in the halls. No echoes of my father's dismissive tone. Only the faint hum of city life through the window and the worn floorboards creaking under my step. I set my suitcase down and just breathed. Wait, you actually took it? Sierra asked over the phone that night. The necklace. Wouldn't you have? Babe, I would have snatched it off her throat mid-gala and dared them to sue me. But you. I thought you were still in your elegant silent rage era. I upgraded, I said. How I just take what was mine. You sound different. I feel different. She paused. You're not coming back, are you? Not unless I have to. There was a beat. Good. Let them miss you when they're all choking on their regrets. I smiled. You always know how to put it delicately. You know me. Graceful like a hammer. Jude helped me set up the new place on Sunday. He showed up wearing a baseball cap and holding 2 iced coffees and a roll of paper towels like it was a survival kit. I brought the essentials, he said, holding them up. No power drill? I teased. He grinned. You doubted me? Then he pulled it out of his backpack. Also brought wall hooks. Thought you might want to hang that necklace box somewhere dramatic. Like above the kitchen sink. I laughed. Very symbolic. You're a lawyer now. Everything's a metaphor. We worked in comfortable rhythm. He unpacked the kitchen, I did the books. Occasionally we'd pause to argue over whether mugs should go on the bottom shelf or if the sofa should face the window or the hallway. So this is your place now, he said after a couple hours. Feels like you. How do you know? No ghosts, he said simply. No corners where your past is still sitting with its arms crossed, waiting for you to fall apart. I looked at him. You always say things like that. Like you've been inside my head. Maybe I have. We stood there for a moment, both quiet. Then he asked, You ready to let people know you're here? You mean the Brooks family fan club? I mean, the people who didn't pick sides but never stood up for you either. I exhaled. Not yet. Let them sit with the silence for a while. He nodded. Fair. Then, like he couldn't help himself, he added softly, I'm glad you're here. And for once I didn't flinch at those words. That night the air was chilly and the window in my bedroom wouldn't quite close. I wrapped myself in the blanket Jude had thrown over the back of the couch earlier, the one he brought from his own apartment because he said, every new place needs a soft beginning. I stared out at the dimly lit street below, the warm yellow glow of the flower shop sign flickering every few seconds. No one had texted. Not Dad. Not Nathan. Not Cassidy. And I didn't miss it. I opened my phone and clicked on Jude's contact. Then typed. Thank you. For showing up. For all of it. His reply came in seconds. You don't owe me thanks. I've been waiting for you to let go of the people who didn't deserve you. And now. I wrote. Now I'm just hoping you'll let me stay. I stared at the screen, heart full and aching. And for the first time in weeks, I replied without hesitation. I'd like that. It started with a shadow by the steps. I had just finished a long afternoon of onboarding paperwork at the legal aid office. My first official day volunteering at the downtown branch. The sky outside had already started to dim into that moody blue that meant autumn was coming fast, and I was too distracted reading a public housing case file to notice him at first. Then I heard the shift of a shoe against pavement. I looked up. Jude was leaning against the iron railing outside the building, holding 2 paper bags in one hand and his jacket slung over his shoulder. He wasn't checking his phone or pacing. He wasn't even looking for me. He was just waiting. And for some reason that made me pause in the doorway longer than necessary. When he finally noticed me, his face softened into a half-smile. Hey. You always this punctual? I was early, he said, holding out one of the bags. You didn't text all day. I figured you'd skip lunch. You stalked me. I observed a pattern, he replied. You get hyper-focused and forget to eat. Also, I wanted to see how your first day went. I took the bag. Warm. Heavy. This is roasted sweet potato sandwich and spiced lentil soup. You're still a soup for every emotion kind of person, right? I stared at him, a little stunned. He added casually, I remembered you always used to eat it with pretzel bread, but they were out. Jude. What? You make it very hard to believe we were just classmates. He smiled. We weren't just classmates. I held his gaze for a second, then looked away, biting back the weird warmth crawling into my chest. You know, I'm not really good at this part. The part after everything collapses. That's okay, he said simply. I'm not asking you to rebuild overnight. Just let someone hand you soup once in a while. We sat on the courthouse steps to eat. We didn't talk about Nathan, or Cassidy, or my father. Just the case I was helping with. A woman trying to get her name back on a lease after her abusive ex-boyfriend tried to evict her without notice. I'm guessing you didn't choose that one by accident, Jude said softly after I told him the basics. I think I just wanted to help someone take back something they never should have had to fight for. He nodded. Sometimes justice looks like revenge. But it isn't. It's just correction. I smiled at that. We ate slowly. Shared bites. I kept my scarf tight around my neck because I didn't want to ruin the moment by sneezing from the early chill. When we finished, he walked me the 5 blocks back to my apartment. Not because he thought I couldn't manage alone, but because he wanted to. And that was different. The next day it happened again. Except this time I spotted him from the break room window. He was standing next to a hot dog cart, talking to a kid selling lottery tickets, letting him pick which scratch-off was luckiest. I didn't wave. I just watched him, heart rising to my throat. Because someone was waiting for me. Without needing anything from me. Without expecting me to perform or apologize or shrink. Jude didn't want the version of me that fit into a gala dress and posed perfectly beside a fiancé. He just wanted me. Later that week I asked him to come up. We didn't make it formal. I just texted, "Soup night at mine?" And he sent back, "On my way. Want me to bring bread or backup emotional support?" Both. He knocked 15 minutes later. I opened the door to find him holding a baguette, a bottle of wine, and a ridiculously soft brown sweater draped over his arm. "What's this?" I asked, pointing at the sweater. "I saw your windows open when I drove by," he said. "And you always hate sleeping cold. You're unreal." He shrugged. "You're underdressed." We moved around the kitchen like we had for years. He chopped carrots, I stirred the broth. Every now and then he'd bump my shoulder and say something dry like, "Don't forget to emotionally season it." We didn't touch much. But there were moments. Brushing hands when passing utensils. His palm at the small of my back when I leaned too close to the stove. And every time my heart stuttered in a way I'd thought it had forgotten. After dinner we sat on the couch with our bowls balanced on our knees. "I know I've said this," I started, "but I really am sorry I disappeared after graduation." He looked at me, brows lifted slightly. "You don't owe me an apology." "I do. You used to message me every birthday every semester. And I never replied. I figured you were busy." "I was miserable," I admitted. "And I didn't want anyone to see it. Especially not you." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "That makes sense. You're not angry?" He shook his head. "I waited 4 years, Elena. Another few months didn't scare me." I turned to him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Waited? You were waiting." He smiled. "You never knew?" "No. I thought we were just old friends." "Elena." He set his bowl down, voice quiet. "I've been in love with you since our second year of undergrad. Since you beat me in that debate and then offered to split your fries." I blinked. "I figured I had a chance. And then you came back from summer break with Nathan on your arm." I laughed under my breath. "God, I was so stupid." "No," he said. "Just looking for love in a place that didn't know how to hold it." I didn't say anything. He didn't press. We sat in silence for a long moment, both staring at the flicker of the candle I had burning on the table. Then I whispered, "I think I'm still healing. Still half broken in some places." "I'm not asking you to be whole," he replied. "Just to let me walk beside you while you figure out what that looks like." I looked at him and nodded. He didn't kiss me. He just reached over and took my hand, fingers slow, patient, as if asking permission with every movement. It was the first time someone had waited for me without expecting anything in return. And I didn't know it then. But it was also the first time I'd let myself want something again. The video came on a Wednesday. I was sitting at my desk in the legal aid office, hunched over a housing eviction case, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "Thought you might want to see this. Can't believe they had the audacity." A link followed. For a second I considered deleting it without opening. But curiosity won. The screen loaded. A pale pink room, white roses cascading across a backdrop. Cassidy in a champagne tulle gown twirling dramatically while Nathan stood nearby laughing. The videographer panned in for the kiss. She leaned in. He hesitated just for a second, then followed. A banner unfurled behind them. C+N forever. Engagement celebration highlight reel. My stomach dropped. I tapped out of the video, but it had already done its damage. The room around me seemed suddenly louder. Brighter. Sharper. I stared at the screen, not breathing. "You okay?" Jude's voice floated in from the hallway. He leaned against the doorframe, holding a coffee with my name written across the sleeve in messy Sharpie. "Just saw something stupid," I said. He stepped in, set the coffee on my desk. "How stupid?" I didn't answer. He studied me for a moment, then said, "Was it him?" I nodded. "Cassidy." I nodded again. He didn't ask to see it. Didn't push. Instead, he pulled out the chair across from mine, sat and said, "Want to talk about it? Or just want to sit?" "Sitting's fine," I murmured. He stayed. For 10 minutes. Then 15. Long enough for the pressure in my chest to ease just slightly. When I finally exhaled, I whispered, "They think I'm still on the edge. They're wrong." I looked up at him. "Am I?" His eyes didn't waver. Not even close. That night, I found myself standing by my bedroom window again, staring out at the street below. My phone buzzed twice before I picked it up. "Sarah, did you see the video?" "I did." "You okay?" I hesitated, then typed, "No. But I'm not breaking." 2 days later, they sent me another one. This time through a group message I hadn't realized I was still part of. A behind-the-scenes clip from the ring fitting. Cassidy gushing, "It's everything I ever dreamed of," while Nathan chuckled and kissed her temple. I didn't watch all of it. Just the first 3 seconds. Then I left the apartment, wrapped myself in Jude's oversized brown sweater, and walked without a destination until I ended up at his place. His living room light was on. A record played softly in the background. Something slow with piano. I didn't knock. He opened the door before I reached it, like he'd been waiting. "I didn't know where else to go," I whispered. "You don't need to know," he said. "You can always come here." He stepped aside and let me in. I curled up on his couch like I'd done it 1,000 times before. He handed me tea without asking and sat beside me without speaking. "I feel stupid," I finally said. "Why?" "Because I don't want him back. But it still hurts. Seeing them. Seeing what should have been mine, even though I don't want it anymore." Jude nodded slowly. "That's not stupid." "Then what is it?" "It's grief." I blinked at him. "You're not missing him, Elena. You're mourning what you gave. What you planned. What you built in your head for 4 years," he said gently. And you're angry someone else walked into it like they earned it. I stared at him. He added softly, but they didn't. They just inherited something they didn't help build. Something inside me cracked open at that. And before I could stop myself, I leaned into him. Just leaned. No words. No questions. Just my head against his shoulder and his arms slowly wrapping around my back like it belonged there. And it did. Later, as I slipped on my shoes to head home, Jude stood by the door holding my coat. You sure you want to go? I nodded. I just needed air. You can stay, you know, he said. No pressure. No expectations. Just stay. I want to, I whispered. But if I do, I think I might cry. He smiled sadly. Then cry. I hesitated. Then leaned forward, rested my forehead against his chest. I keep thinking about how many versions of myself I gave to people who didn't keep them. He was quiet for a moment. Then don't give yourself any more. Just be. And I'll be here with you. That night I stayed. Not in his bed. Not in his arms. Just beside him on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, both of us half asleep with some old black and white film playing on mute. His hand rested over mine. Warm. Anchoring. And in that small silence I finally let the tears fall. But they didn't break me. They freed me. It started with a whisper. The kind that slinks through silk-covered pews and crystal chandeliers with more menace than any shouted truth ever could. Cassidy's wedding day was a public relations event as much as it was a ceremony. A 5-star ballroom at the Crown Regent Hotel. Imported white orchids. A custom dress from Milan. Every detail manicured to perfection. And yet even before the vows something felt off. I wasn't there, of course. I'd made it clear when the invitation never arrived. I wouldn't have come anyway. But Sierra was. Because Sierra, despite being a blunt force hurricane of a woman, had a cousin who handled press for the Brooks Foundation. And that cousin just so happened to stream the event on her private Instagram story. Sierra sent me the link with no warning. Just, you're gonna want to see this. I was curled up on my couch, sipping Earl Grey and grading intake forms when I clicked it. The first few clips were as expected. Cassidy posing, Nathan checking his watch. Dad pacing near the altar like he was hosting a merger. Then came the mother of the groom. Nathan's mom had always been polite, reserved. The kind of woman who spoke in quiet tones and smiled with her eyes more than her mouth. But in this clip she looked visibly strained, lips tight, eyes narrowed. She was speaking to Cassidy, off to the side of the dressing suite. I turned up the volume. I just think we deserve to know, Mrs. Hale was saying. Cassidy's voice, though muffled, sounded tight. There's nothing to discuss. It's Nathan's decision. He wants this. Cassidy, the older woman said more firmly. You told us you were pregnant. That's why we pushed for the wedding. You told us. The feed cut out. I blinked. Froze. Clicked to refresh. Another clip came up. Sierra's cousin had clearly realized something was happening and turned the camera back on. This time the audio picked up mid-sentence. Was never pregnant, Mrs. Hale was saying now, her voice raised. And now you expect us to stand here and smile while you marry my son under false pretenses? Gasps. Actual gasps from the room. And not the polite social faux shock kind. These were sharp, real, ragged. Then the camera turned shakily too fast. Nathan was walking toward them. He looked confused. What's going on? Ask her, his mother snapped, pointing at Cassidy. Ask her what she's done. Cassidy's face crumpled. Nathan, I thought if I told you the truth you'd leave again, she said, her voice trembling. I was scared. You were slipping away from me. You lied about a baby? I wanted a life with you. Nathan stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. And then he turned and walked away. Right there. Mid-ceremony. In front of everyone. The guests froze. Cassidy's hand fell to her side. Her bouquet hit the floor. Sierra messaged me a second later. She lied to everyone. Even your dad didn't know. Nathan just left. Walked straight out. I read it 3 times. Then set my phone down slowly and let the silence wrap around me. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I didn't even flinch. I just breathed in the weight of justice coming quietly. An hour later Sierra called. Tell me you saw it, she said before I even said hello. I saw it. I mean, holy shit, Elena. You couldn't script this better. Apparently she told Nathan she was pregnant when he started second-guessing everything a few months ago, she said, practically breathless. Used it to rush the engagement. His parents only supported it because of the baby. Was there ever a baby? Never. I leaned back on the couch, closed my eyes. And now? She's locked herself in the bridal suite. Nathan's mom took the mic and told everyone to go home. Your dad looked like he aged 10 years in 10 seconds. I bet. Elle, she said more softly now, you were right about her. All of it. I always was, I whispered. She tried to become you. But she couldn't hold it. Nope. We were quiet for a moment. Then Sierra asked, how do you feel? I paused. Then said honestly, not vindicated. Not exactly. She waited. I just feel done, I said. Like I finally finished writing a chapter one didn't want to live in anymore. Sierra exhaled. Then closed the book. That night Jude showed up with dinner. He didn't knock. Just texted. Downstairs. Chinese or Indian? Surprise me. I buzzed him up. When he walked in he paused by the door holding 2 paper bags and giving me a look. You saw it. Everyone did. He set the food down and took off his coat. Do you want to talk about it or ignore it until dessert? I gave a small smile. Little of both. We sat cross-legged on the floor eating quietly for a few minutes. Then I said, she lied to keep him. The one thing I never did. Jude looked at me. You never had to. Because you knew your worth. She just knew what she wanted. Do you think he regrets it? Does it matter? I considered that. And finally said, no. It doesn't. After dinner, I lit a candle and Jude stretched out on the couch, his head resting on my lap, my fingers absently combing through his hair. I keep thinking about how I would have handled this a year ago, I murmured. You mean before the broken engagement and relocation therapy? I smiled faintly. Exactly. And how would that version of you have handled today? She'd be curled up in her childhood bedroom, crying under 3 blankets, wondering why she was never enough. And now? I looked down at him. Now she's just free. He reached up, took my hand. I'm proud of you. I'm not done healing. I'm still proud. I bent slightly, brushing my lips against his forehead. Jude smiled. Is that my reward? No. This is. I kissed him, soft, slow, certain. He didn't rush. Didn't grab. He just met me there in the middle and held on like he'd been waiting forever. Maybe he had. Maybe this time. I was ready. It arrived 3 days after the wedding disaster. No knock. No doorbell. Just the sound of the mail slot clinking shut and a soft thud on my hallway rug. At first I thought it was another flyer. A new cafe opening maybe. A dry cleaning coupon. But when I picked it up I recognized the handwriting instantly. Nathan's. My fingers didn't shake but they were cold. I stood at the door for a moment, envelope in hand, pulse a quiet drumbeat in my ears. Then I turned, walked into the kitchen and set it down beside the fruit bowl. I didn't open it. Not yet. Still sealed. Jude asked that evening. We were sitting on the couch, reruns playing low in the background. He nodded toward the envelope still resting on the counter. Still sealed, I confirmed. Want to burn it? I want to forget it exists. You could do that. I could. He waited a beat. But. I sighed. But a part of me needs to know if he finally saw me. Even once. Jude didn't press. He just reached over and gently laced his fingers through mine. When you're ready. The next morning I opened it. Not in anger. Not out of hope. Just quiet inevitability. The letter was handwritten, of course it was, and folded into thirds with surgical neatness. I unfolded it slowly. Elena. I don't know where to start. But I guess I'm sorry is a place. I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness, or even your eyes scanning these words. But if you are, thank you. I thought I understood love. I thought love was about warmth and fire and all-consuming gravity. But what you gave me was something I didn't know how to value back then. Calm. Stillness. Stability. You loved me like a lighthouse loves the shore, steady without demand. And I chased the storm instead. Cassidy was the noise I mistook for depth. The drama I thought meant passion. I wanted to feel important to Lena. I wanted to be the center of someone's entire world. And in her eyes I was. But with you I was just myself. And maybe that scared me more than I realized. I can't take back what I did. But if you ever wonder, if you ever doubt, I did love you. I just wasn't strong enough to choose the right kind of love. The kind that lasts. I hope you found someone who sees you clearly. Who waits when you're quiet. Who stays when it's hard. And if not, I hope you know you deserve that and more. I'll always carry the weight of what I gave away. Nathan. I read it twice. Not because I was moved. But because I needed to be certain of one thing: he finally saw me, but only when I was gone. I folded the letter back up and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. Not out of sentiment, but because it no longer had the power to move me. That afternoon I met Jude at his office. He was waiting at the curb, holding 2 iced lattes and squinting up at the sky like it had betrayed him. Why is it always hot when I order a hot drink and cold when I order iced? Because the universe has a petty streak, I replied. He handed me a cup. You okay? I opened the letter. His brows lifted slightly. And I shrugged. He said sorry. That he loved me. That he was too weak to choose the right love. Jude was quiet for a second. Then, you believe him? I believe he thinks it now. But I also believe he wouldn't have realized any of it if I hadn't walked away. He nodded. People only notice your worth when they lose access to it. We started walking toward the library square where food trucks lined the edge of the fountain. He said he chased noise, I said. That Cassidy made him feel important. And you? I made him feel like himself. And he didn't know how to handle that. Jude took a sip of his drink. It's funny. What is? He was scared of being seen. And all you ever did was look at him and love what you saw. I looked at Jude. Do you ever get tired of being the only person who gets it? He smirked. No. I like the exclusivity. That evening we cooked together again, grilled vegetables and mushroom risotto. I told him about my latest client, a single mom trying to navigate a nightmare custody battle. Jude offered quiet commentary, insights, and long moments where he just listened. After dinner we sat on the floor again, plates pushed aside, wine glasses full. I feel like I've been underwater for years, I murmured. And now that I'm breathing again, everything's louder. Colors. Sounds. Even silence. He reached out, brushed my hair back from my face. And how does that feel? He asked softly. Terrifying, I whispered. But also, kind of wonderful. He leaned in close enough that our foreheads touched. I want to be there for the whole version of you, he said. Not just the one that's healing. Not just the one that's moving on. The one that remembers how to dream again. I swallowed hard. You already are. Then I kissed him. Not to forget. Not to replace. But to begin. The proposal came on a Sunday. Not the kind with violin quartets or rose petals. No flash mobs. No cameras. Just warmth. Familiar laughter. The scent of garlic bread in the air. It was the kind of love that felt like home before you even knew the address. That morning I woke up to the sound of Jude cursing quietly in the kitchen. I slipped out of bed, wrapped his shirt around me and padded in barefoot. What did you do? I asked, half amused, half alarmed. He looked up sheepishly from the stove, holding a smoking pan. Define burnt. Is the bottom of the pan still attached? That's subjective. I crossed my arms. Weren't you trying to make waffles? I was, he said defensively, until I realized I don't own a waffle maker. I blinked. Jude. Don't judge me. I panicked and tried to improvise with a grill pan. You grilled waffles? He opened the trash bin dramatically and revealed the evidence. One very sad, very blackened waffle corpse. I laughed so hard I had to hold on to the counter. Hey, he said, pointing a spatula at me. You're the one who told me I needed a signature breakfast dish. Yes, I gasped between laughs. But I didn't mean charred bread of doom. He sighed, then cracked a grin. Hey. I concede. You win breakfast. You'll always win breakfast. I walked over, took the spatula and kissed him on the cheek. Good. Now get out of my kitchen before you set off the fire alarm again. He raised his hands in surrender and backed away dramatically. Chef Elena takes the lead. We ate on the balcony, legs tangled beneath the tiny table, a playlist of old jazz humming through his speaker. This is nice, I murmured, sipping orange juice. He nodded. It's better than nice. Why? Because you're here. And the waffles didn't kill us. Low bar. still counts. After breakfast, we drove out to a small weekend market near the river. Jude bought me fresh tulips. I bought him cinnamon rolls he pretended not to like but devoured in 3 bites. At one point he paused by a booth selling handcrafted wooden signs. He pointed at one painted in soft green script. "Let's make a life, not just a living." I glanced at it. "You like that?" "I do," he said, eyes on me. "Do you?" I smiled. "Very much." He didn't say anything else. Just reached into his wallet and bought it. That night, back at my apartment, we sat on the floor, again with pizza and red wine and a mess of laughter between us. We played cards. We told stories we hadn't told before. He told me how, during our last year of college, he'd skipped his mock trial final round because I was sick and no one else noticed. "You did not." "I did," he said, grinning. "I showed up to your dorm with cough syrup, ginger tea, and that weird lemon candy you were obsessed with." "Wait," I said, eyes wide. "That was you?" "I always thought it was Sierra." "Seriously?" She swore it wasn't her. "I thought I had a secret admirer." "You did," he said quietly. And just like that, the laughter stilled. "Think." I looked at him. "You've been waiting this long?" "Not waiting," he said. "Just hoping." Quietly. I reached for his hand. "I'm sorry it took me so long." He laced our fingers together. "It's okay. I just wanted you to come back whole. Not rushed. Not broken." "I don't think I'm whole yet." He leaned closer. "Then let me build the rest with you." It happened just after midnight. We were brushing our teeth, me in his oversized hoodie, him shirtless and still somehow managing to look like an ad for toothpaste. He tapped my hip with his elbow. "Move over. You take up the whole sink. You use too much toothpaste." "I do not." "Babe, you look like a rabid squirrel when you brush." I swatted his arm with my toothbrush. "That's it. I'm telling the next barista your full latte order and making sure it gets written on your cup." "You wouldn't dare." "Jude, half sweet oat milk double shot caramel with a splash of cinnamon Ellis," I sing-songed. He covered his face. "Don't expose me like this." I was still laughing when he reached into the drawer and pulled out a ring box. Except when he opened it, it was empty. I blinked. Planning ahead. He smiled. "I was going to wait." "For what?" "For rooftop. Fireworks. Champagne. Whatever Pinterest says to do." I laughed. And then I realized, this is it. Us in the bathroom. Laughing about coffee orders and dental hygiene. He turned, leaned against the counter and looked at me so steady I forgot how to breathe for a second. "Elena Brooks," he said, "I don't have a ring right now. And I don't have a speech. But I do have this. I want to keep laughing with you for the rest of my life. Through burned waffles, ruined suits, and whatever else comes next." My heart soared. "I want mornings with you," he continued, "and quiet evenings and inside jokes and team grocery trips where we fight over cereal brands. I want all of it." He took both my hands. "Will you marry me?" I didn't need to think. I just smiled, teeth still foamy with toothpaste, and whispered, "Yes." Then we laughed. Because my mouth was still full of mint and his was slightly dribbling water. And when we kissed, awkward, half-giggling warm, it was perfect. Exactly us. The next day I wore a $10 fake gold band from the market on my finger. Sierra cried when I called. "Are you serious?" she shouted. "I'm already looking up glitter jumpsuits for the after-party. Also, if you don't let me give a toast, I will haunt your honeymoon. You'll be the maid of honor." "Damn right I will. And we're keeping it small." "Girl, you say that now, but I've already contacted a DJ and 2 photographers." I rolled my eyes. "You're insane." "I'm in love with your love story." So was I. That evening, Jude came over with a brown paper bag. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant gold. No diamond. Just a tiny engraved line along the inner edge. I slipped it on without a word. "It fits perfectly," I murmured. He smiled. "Of course it does." It was a spring morning when I walked down the aisle. Not a cathedral. Not a hotel ballroom with chandeliers dripping like glass tears. No. We chose a garden. A quiet, blooming garden at the edge of the city where the trees leaned inward like they were whispering blessings, and the air smelled like lavender and late sunlight. There were no hundreds of guests. No press. No forced family smiles. Just the people who had truly stayed. Sierra, grinning like she knew every secret in the world as she fixed my veil. Jude's sister, Nora, who offered me a lucky charm she wore at her own wedding. The florist who cried when she handed me the bouquet. Jude, standing at the end of the aisle in a charcoal gray suit with no tie and that slow, steady smile that always reached his eyes before it reached his lips. And me, walking with no one on my arm. Because I had already learned to walk through fire alone. Because I didn't need to be given away. Because this time I was choosing me too. The night before I'd received a message. From him. From Dad. I heard it's tomorrow. I don't expect forgiveness. But if there's a chair in the back, I'd be grateful just to be there. I didn't reply. Instead I read it once. And deleted it. Because some doors don't need to be slammed to stay shut. Some are simply, no longer yours to knock on. As I reached the end of the aisle, Jude's eyes never left mine. Not once. He didn't glance at the guests or the flowers or the camera. Just me. Like I was the only thing that mattered. Like I'd been the only thing that ever mattered. When I reached him, I took his hand and we both exhaled at the same time. You good, he whispered, voice low. I'm golden, I whispered back. You. I'm marrying you, he said. So yeah. I'm perfect. Sierra sniffled audibly from the front row. I swear to God, if he says anything poetic during the vows, I'm going to cry on someone's shoulder. Promise to cry on the photographer's, I whispered, grinning. She did. Our vows weren't scripted. We hadn't rehearsed them. No cue cards. No fancy metaphors. Just the truth. Jude went first. Elena, he said, his voice steady, I'm not marrying the version of you that survived the worst. I'm marrying all of you. The woman who still flinches when the phone rings at night. The one who overseasons her soup when she's anxious. The one who left behind an entire name and built herself from memory. He paused, then smiled. I promise to never ask you to shrink. To never ask you to soften what made you strong. I don't want the easy parts. I want all the work and all the wonder. Tears slid down my cheeks before I even started mine. I looked up at him. Jude, you waited for me when I didn't even know I was allowed to be waited for. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You didn't ask me to be okay, you just stood beside me until I was. My voice wavered, but I didn't stop. I promised to never forget that love is built, not just found. That some homes are made from words and patience and showing up again and again. And that you, your calm, your steadiness, your fire, are the only person I trust to walk through the rest of this life with. He was crying now too. Just a little. But enough that I knew every word had landed exactly where it was meant to. When the officiant pronounced us married, Jude didn't wait. He pulled me close, one hand in my hair, the other at my waist, and kissed me like we were alone. And maybe in that moment we were. No more Nathan. No more Cassidy. No more questions about who I was, who I should be, who I wasn't enough for. Just this. Just him. Just me. At the reception, more of a backyard dinner than a party, Sierra gave her toast. Elena used to walk into a room and freeze the air, she began. Not because she was cold, but because she was holding everything in. Grace, grief, guilt, all of it tucked behind a perfect expression. Everyone chuckled softly. And then she met Jude. Or rather, Jude reminded her that softness doesn't make you weak. That gentleness doesn't mean surrender. Sierra raised her glass. To the woman who finally stopped apologizing for being too much. And to the man who never once asked her to be less. The applause was warm and wild. Jude leaned into my ear and whispered, "Best maid of honor ever." I trained her well. Later, as the stars came out and the string lights above us glowed like bottled constellations, we danced barefoot on the grass. He twirled me once, then pulled me back close. "I still can't believe you said yes," he murmured against my hair. "Why not?" "Because I still remember the first time you ignored me for an entire semester." I laughed. "You were cocky. I was patient." "Same thing." He smiled, then grew quiet. "Elena." "Yeah. I love you." The way he said it, it wasn't a declaration. It was a knowing. Like I'd always belonged to that sentence even before it left his mouth. I looked up at him, brushing my fingers against his jaw. "I know," I whispered. "And I love you more than I ever thought I'd be allowed to love anyone again." We left the next morning for the coast. No plans. No schedule. Just each other and the open road. At one point we pulled over near a cliff and watched the waves crash below. Jude took my hand and slipped the ring gently off my finger, kissed the inside of it, then slid it back on. Lucky charm, he whispered. And I believed him. Because this time, I wasn't afraid of being broken. Because I wasn't. Not anymore. The end.